Hello and welcome to Leaders inStudio, our Emirates edition. My name is Uliana Zilbermans. I'm Chief Revenue Officer for Avenue Code. We're a global consulting company and we're fortunate to travel around the world and interview leaders in IT. Talk about their stories, spotlight innovation, technology, and differences in different verticals, different lifestyles, and also cultivating new leadership and understanding of how the world is different or united at the same time. I am very lucky to have Jayakumar with me today, one of our leaders, and I'd like you to introduce yourself and your company. And I want to know more about your personal journey and how you got to Dubai, and because it's a fascinating story. I already heard about it before the interview.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me over here. I think to start with the journey in terms of how I reached to this particular position and here in Dubai, it all started off from India. I mean, like, I'm basically from India, and like any other person, we had a very humble beginning. Starting off with first of all, born and brought up in a village there in India, and moving on with the studies and the graduations, and all was happening there in India, and probably always had a passion towards technology. So at the time of graduation itself, I started learning more about technology, and I started doing something on my own. So my entrepreneurial stint started off along with the graduation period itself. And that's how I got into this world of technology a bit more. And from there, slowly, I started working for companies, right at that time as part-time, and then, did quite a lot of work at that period and moved to do my master's in computer applications, and then moving on, started off working as a full-time employee in different organizations as IT managers and head of ITs and things like that. Technology has always been passionate subject for me, and always wanted to do something in that field which could actually help the organizations to thrive. And probably this was one of the biggest learning in this whole journey as well, to how to be more innovative, or how to be in touch with the stakeholders to make sure that you understand what exactly they need, rather than just kind of doing proper infrastructure related work. So when we started off, we all started off as infrastructure architects. So because that was the interest at that point in time, how to understand, or trying to understand how a computer works, what's inside. And probably those days it was quite critical and important for us to understand that as well, because that was the grounding. It was easier for me to get into this field, and also understand the requirements of the businesses. And one of the elements which we were always focused was in terms of the application side, because the business thrives on applications, and probably if you understand the requirements from the stakeholders, and then you can think about articulating that and converting that into a business application. So probably this is how you start your journey, and probably I was fortunate enough to get good mentors at that point in time, who helped me in co-creating and developing this passion and making sure that I'm going in the right direction. So over a period of time, I had the opportunity to work in some of the large enterprises in India, and then from there I got an opportunity to work for a global company, and then I moved to the US. So I was in Baltimore for some time, and then I was handling the APAC region for them, and then again I had to travel back into the Asia Pacific region, and from there the journey was going through different countries and trying to understand the culture, and how technology plays a bigger role there. And then eventually I landed up in Middle East through Wipro. That was one of my shortest stint on the other side, not as a customer. Yeah. And that landed me in the Middle East, and from there I landed here in UAE. And UAE is a very, very happening place, and this place has got to attract talents. And probably once you land over here, then you understand the pace of the technology over here, then obviously this is a place which you want to be. If you are a technocrat and if you want to do something, then this is one of the right place. And that's the whole journey. If you look back, and it's been 7 years here in UAE, and very interesting ride through, and currently working as the group CIO for Easa, Saleh, Gurg.
Awesome. And tell me why it is a happening place. Is it because the government supports innovation or technology, or like what would, especially because you've been to US and you've seen the technology space there as well?
Yeah, I mean, primarily if you look the West and this side, the West has already been developed. I mean, all of those things, what we speak, talk, a lot of things have happened there quite a long time back. If you look at the Middle East as a region, probably I think one of the biggest element is actually they want to pivot from revenue that is purely dependent on a petrochemical towards a knowledge-based economy. So I think this is one of the fundamental reason why the government also supports quite a lot of innovation and investments towards technology. So if you look at UAE as a country, I mean, this is one of the first country in the world to have a Minister for Artificial Intelligence. So if you look at the innovations that's happening over here, probably UAE is leading the space in terms of innovation and digital transformation, and that's the reason why I said it's a very happening place. So if you look at any sort of investments that any of the companies do, and even government for that matter, I mean the government organizations, what they are actually investing right now is something which is fabulous. So this morning I had a chat with one of the ministry representative, and he was talking about the project he's actually doing with Metaverse, for the healthcare division. So it's interesting to see how they take on technologies and keep going and make sure that they are more resilient, and they want to pivot.
That's very nice. That's awesome. And your company that you joined, Easa, right?
Gurg.
Yes. So tell us more about it's the company has been around since 1960, right? It's a conglomerate. There are so many companies under. Tell us more about what the company does, and also a culture of the company, and how do you keep up with the technology when you have such a traditional, long-standing company? That would be very interesting.
Yeah, it's Gurg as an organization. As I mentioned, it's a very old, family-owned business over here in UAE. It's been formed in 1960, so it's almost 10 years older than UAE. And if you look at the history, we started off with a very humble beginning, and we have grown over the years into different lines of businesses. So currently we operate out of retail, real estate, manufacturing, trading and industrial business, and also we have some very interesting joint ventures. Probably if you look at all these companies, everything goes with the same ethos and same culture. So it's the leadership and the culture that actually helps Gurg as an enterprise to grow in this region. So if you look at any of the family-owned businesses or conglomerates, every organization will have a similar line of ethos and culture which actually drives them towards any transformation which you see here in UAE. So we are very much aligned with the mission and vision of the UAE government, and probably we ensure that we also transform ourselves. So as I mentioned, it's the leadership and the culture which helps us to transform and make sure that we are upbeat in terms of this race.
Very nice, very nice. I can't agree with you more, because if you think about the culture, innovation, and then when the leadership is aligned, you can really look into faster ways and maybe adopting the best practices of one of the groups and looking at it holistically from other areas. Especially you have all the different verticals that are so different, right? Which one is the most leading group under the company? Is it?
It's very hard to say. I mean, I'm sure that whoever would be watching us would also be, it's not very fair to say that. But at the same time, each of them has got a different way of doing business. And all of them are good in their respective areas. Some of them we have started a little late, but are doing extremely well, in the last couple of years. So being diversified is also one of our strengths, if you really ask, because if one sector goes down, then obviously we have a balance from the other side. So especially when the last 2 years, when we had the pandemic, when we had a couple of industrial business and a couple of issues related to the other sectors which was going on, there were sectors which was contributing towards the revenue, which could keep us stay afloat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's talk about pandemic. You've been representing different regions, different countries, right, in the Middle East. So how pandemic did really affect some of the companies, but also did you embrace the work from home scenarios and, you know, having diversified teams? How do you cultivate the culture? Is there opportunity that you saw from that, you know, kind of connection globally?
Absolutely, yes. You know, we also embraced work from home right from the day one of the lockdown. Unfortunate enough, we at Gurg, we had a very good infrastructure which was ready at that point in time, which helped us to enable the work from home option for our employees right from day one. And this is something which goes back into the same topic of digital transformation, what I mentioned. You know, so historically, the leadership was very supportive in terms of investments and making sure that we stay afloat. So we are able to kind of bring in those technologies that actually helped to transform Gurg much before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So this actually helped us in enabling the work from home options. And of late, you might have seen, you know, UAE going into a global scenario of changing the weekends. And Gurg was the first company from a private sector to announce, you know, the Friday complete work from home, and we are working 4 days from office. So this actually proves that, you know, we are aligned completely with the UAE government, and also we are able to do this because of the transformation and because of the investments which we have made right. And also, just to emphasize on the leadership and the culture, we are a very objective-driven organization. We wanted to make sure that things happen. It's not just an 8 to 5 kind of a working environment anymore. So it's not work from home, it's work from anywhere, literally.
Yeah, and where do you operate? Like, if you think about the top areas in Middle East, and where do you see the people want to be and live when you have an opportunity to actually work from anywhere? Do you see a shift that people are moving and starting working from another place, from your engineers and?
Yeah, I think it happens. It keeps on happening, you know. So Dubai or UAE is such a happening place. So as I mentioned before coming over here into the interview, I now realize that how beautiful this place of production city is all about. Yeah. You know, so wherever you go, you'll find a sweet spot where you can hit, and people will keep on exploring these things, and that's the beauty of UAE. And it's a very small country, but at the same time, you have plenty of options, and infrastructure-wise, it's very good. You will get plenty of options to move around and, you know, find a perfect work-life balance if you want that, and make sure that you can operate from anywhere.
Okay, and if I don't know anything about UAE and all the places, tell me the top 3 places, like from your perspective. If you were an engineer that, you know, had that opportunity to. Anybody
who is coming from outside definitely would be knowing the Atlantis and the marinas. Yeah. And the Jumeirah. I mean, these locations will definitely top in the rank in terms of being a happening place, and also make sure that you get an international standard of living. Very nice, very nice. Let's talk a little bit about consulting. You know, when you think about working with engineers, and where do you see the most innovative places, in UAE of course, but outside in the Middle East, new upcoming countries that you feel that there would be a future of technology innovation, anything that you see that's shifting, that you're actually expanding after pandemic, when you have more opportunities to have connections throughout the Middle East region? In the Middle East, I think, as I mentioned, UAE is leading the show, but at the same time, Saudi is, you know, coming behind and making sure that, you know, they are also, you know, they also wanted to drive this transformation. Mm-hmm. And historically, if you look, Saudi as a country was having so much of restrictions, and in the last couple of years, we have all seen how they have transformed. You know, so a lot of things have changed, and probably as an enterprise, we also see quite a lot of opportunities by venturing into Saudi. Mm-hmm. And the other similar countries, you know, in terms of the corporations what we have with UAE in the Middle East, I think investment specific, there are plenty of opportunities lying with each of those countries, but we see the maximum amount of opportunities in KSA, which is Saudi.
Mm-hmm. Saudi, okay, very good. And I'm just curious about innovation in general. You know, like we always talk about that here. It's all about new and innovative things, and the Future Museum that is amazing. How do you see? Why do you feel that there is this strive for innovation, and how the support is, like how companies support innovation. Maybe example of your company, or because I think that's where really the difference between the regions, that support for innovation and innovative ideas, the products that are just, like somebody come up with something and there is a support mechanism to get that into life.
I think as technology leaders, we all talk about agility. UAE is all about agility. I mean, if you look at the government, what they do and what they support innovation, or what they support to do and come up with innovative projects. The ecosystem is built in such a model or such a fashion that people can go ahead and find and trying to innovate something, and they are not scared to fail. So they can actually go ahead. The fail fast culture, which is the very famous one in AWS. If you look at that, the similar model is being adopted here. And I think this is something which most of the organizations also do. If you look at the agility, and this is something which any organization who wants to be upbeat in this game should adopt to. So basically they want to focus towards coming up with smaller groups, and who want to kind of focus on certain products and product developments, and going agile. Whether it's a project, whether it's a program, everything has got a structure in place. So here what happens is like the ecosystem is so well connected, and the government also supports that towards to an extent to make sure that any enterprise who is embarking on a journey should get the enough support to make sure that they are able to complete that project on time. And this is something which is completely we should thank the UAE government, and I think all the enterprises are going through the same level of comfort in terms of dealing with them.
Absolutely. I think last question for me is, what advice would you give to young leaders? There's a lot of very up and coming leaders that are fastly developing, and it's 3-5 years they're becoming managers, directors, and they still don't have the maturity that maybe like more the long-standing CIOs had. What would you give advice to either young leaders or your young self to be inspiring and forward thinking?
Yeah, I think a very interesting question. Probably if you look at the millennial generation, I'm not sure like how many companies they would be working before they go for a retirement. And this is a very fast changing world which we all live in. In our life, every piece is connected with something or the other. I mean, we live in an era where everywhere you will see a computing bit which is there. If you look at the kind of people who are coming into this roles, the patience levels are very less. So one of the fundamental thing which you need to ensure, or which you need to have, or a must have for a CIO for the future, is actually the patience. Once you have the patience, the second thing which you need to focus on is actually to build the trust. So without a patience, you cannot try for building a trust as well. So this morning I was having a chat with one of the groups over here, and we were having a conversation. We were talking about the concept of kinetic leadership. So this is where the future is going to be. I mean, there is no more CIOs. The role is diversified. It's actually moving into CPO, CDO, CTO, and CISO, and multiple things. And if you focus from internal to external infrastructure, the role is more focused towards making sure. Earlier it was more of a trusted operator kind of a model. Yeah. Right now it's moving towards a business co-creation or a change instigator kind of a role. And that's something which is going to be the future. So a kinetic leader or a kinetic leadership is all about making sure that you have that mass, which is the influence, and also the velocity, which is actually to make sure that the speed at which you can influence and get the things moving in your organization. So I think this is the trait which any modern CIO should have to influence and lead the transformation for their endeavors or their organizations or institutions which they work for.
That's amazing. I agree with you, and I think that the CIO today, as you mentioned, that they're business people. They're really connected people with both worlds, where they really can translate. They act as this great translator from business and IT, and also find the best velocity, as you said, and agility on how to adapt quickly. Do you feel that the young generation, since you mentioned young generation and the future of tech, and think about our children and how everything is changing, how is the technology leadership, like you mentioned, the CIO probably wouldn't exist and there would be other roles, but just in general, if you think about new tech and new generation, how do they will run the companies in IT, and what would it look like in 10, 20 years, in your opinion? Like just dreaming about the future techies.
I think it's more of a consultative approach. I mean, there's no specific or role specific, people who would be doing certain things. Technology is so well interconnected now, as I mentioned, in our life. It becomes quite natural that the business leaders will also be quite tech savvy, where they can run the show and they will be knowing like what they need. Even today we are seeing the glimpses of it. Earlier were those days where we actually go back and do a research and go back to the board and present something. But now the business themselves will come and say that, hey, look, I mean, there is something which the other companies are doing, this AI or this RPA. I mean, a lot of those projects are available. Why can't we do that over here? Can we do this particular technology, or can we implement this particular solution for our problem? I mean, so that's the way which they are already coming up. Yeah. So in the future, obviously, that tech intensity is going to be very high. So basically, the role of IT leaders or technology leaders would be actually moving towards from a enabler, influencer kind of a role towards a challenger and a owner kind of a role. So basically we would be moving towards that, because it will be high tech intensive organizations in the future.
Yeah, very nice. Well said. Thank you so much, Jay, for joining us, for sharing your story from moving here and sharing little bits of information about Dubai, because that's very new to us, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us, Leaders in Studio, and see you in the next episode.